The morning it happened, I was trying to figure out what day it was. Hospitals make it hard to tell. The lights never really turn off. The air always smells faintly like antiseptic and warm plastic. There's a low humming sound that never stops, like the building is breathing for you. My name is Hannah Cole. I'm 29 years old. I had been in a car accident the night before. I remember rain on the windshield, headlights coming too fast, the sound of metal folding in on itself, then sirens, then nothing. When I opened my eyes, my arm was in a sling and my ribs felt tight when I tried to breathe. There were wires across my chest and a monitor beside the bed giving off a steady, patient beep. I wasn't fully awake when I heard my sister's voice. "You always fake being sick." It was said lightly, almost casually, like she was commenting on the weather. I kept my eyes half closed. My throat was dry and it hurt to speak. I could see her shape at the end of the bed. My mother sat near the window scrolling on her phone, the glow reflecting on her glasses. Tara stepped closer to the monitor and tilted her head. "This noise is annoying," she said. Then she reached over and pulled the cord out. The screen went black. The room went quiet in a way that felt wrong. Not peaceful, just empty. I didn't move. I didn't shout. My body felt heavy, like wet sand. I remember thinking, very calmly, if the nurse doesn't walk in right now, no one will know this happened. The door hadn't fully closed. A nurse stepped inside, saw the dark screen, and without raising her voice said, "You're going to wait here. I've already called security." That wasn't the part that stayed with me. What stayed with me was something else. A document I would see 3 days later, a timestamp, a recorded request made while I was unconscious. But at that moment, I just lay there and listened to my own breathing, waiting for the sound of footsteps in the hallway. The early hours in a hospital stretch longer than they should. The nurse reconnected the monitor. The beeping returned, steady and regular. She checked my IV line with careful fingers and asked me softly if I felt safe. I didn't answer right away. My chest felt tight, and not just from the cracked ribs. 2 officers came in a few minutes later. A woman first, then a man. Their radios made a faint static sound against the quiet room. They spoke to the nurse, then to me. "Do you feel safe here?" the female officer asked. I looked at the ceiling. I didn't say yes. That was enough. They explained to my sister and mother that interfering with medical equipment wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a legal issue. I watched Tara's face shift from irritation to something pale and sharp. My mother tried to smooth it over, said it was stress, said we'd all had a long night. They were escorted out. The door clicked shut. For a few minutes, I felt something close to relief. Not victory, just air. Later that afternoon, a different doctor came in. She introduced herself as Dr. Miller. She didn't rush. She pulled a chair closer instead of standing over me. Her voice was calm, measured. She told me that while I had been unconscious in the ER, someone had tried twice to access my medical chart without authorization. They had claimed to be my primary emergency contact. It had been denied both times. The hospital had documented it. There were timestamps, badge numbers, notes in the system. I remember staring at the wall while she explained it. I wasn't surprised. That was the part that unsettled me most. I had spent years telling myself my sister was just blunt, that my mother was just protective, that I misunderstood their tone. Hospitals don't misunderstand tone. They log behavior. That evening, they moved me to a smaller room at the end of the hallway. The nurse said it was for trauma patients who needed quiet. The room smelled faintly of clean linen. The light was softer. The beeping continued, steady and reassuring. When they finally returned my phone the next morning, it came in a plastic bag with my wallet and watch. The battery was almost dead. When I powered it on, it lit up immediately. 30 missed calls, voicemails sent around 2:30 in the morning, text messages that shifted from anger to panic. "You're making this worse. Call me before this gets out of control. "Stop embarrassing us." I read them slowly. Then I put the phone face down, and I waited. The nurse brought my breakfast on a plastic tray that rattled slightly when she set it down. Scrambled eggs, toast, a little carton of orange juice. I didn't eat much. My ribs hurt when I leaned forward, and my stomach felt tight in a way that had nothing to do with the accident. The room was quiet, but my phone wasn't. It kept lighting up with missed calls and short messages that acted like I was the one who had caused a scene, as if the unplugged monitor was a misunderstanding and the police were an overreaction, and I was supposed to fix the discomfort of everyone else. I didn't respond. That was not new for me. Silence was something I learned early. With Tara, anything you said could be used as proof that you were unstable, dramatic, difficult. With my mother, anything you said could be turned into a story that ended with her being the one who tried her best. So I kept my face neutral. I spoke when staff asked questions. I nodded. I thanked people. I followed instructions. Then I stayed quiet. Around mid-morning, a social worker stopped by. Her badge read J. Price. She sat in the chair by the window and asked if I had somewhere safe to go after discharge. I said, yes. It was the simplest answer, and in that moment it was true. I had an apartment. I had a job I could do remotely. I had a life that didn't depend on them, not in any immediate way. At least, that's what I believed at the time. She asked if I wanted to file a formal complaint against my family for what happened in the room. I asked what that would involve. She explained it calmly. A report, documentation. The hospital would attach their records, security footage, staff statements. I didn't say yes right away. Not because I was protecting them, I just knew what came after. When you make something official, people like my mother don't apologize. They go into management mode. They start calling relatives. They start reshaping the story before it settles. I told the social worker I needed time to think. She nodded like she understood exactly what that meant, and she left me a card on the tray table. Her handwriting was neat, careful, direct extension, office hours. After she left, I stared at the card for a long time. Then I slid it into the pocket of my hoodie that was hanging on the back of the chair. A small decision. A quiet one. By noon, the messages changed. My sister's texts went from sharp to pleading, then back again. My mother's were fewer, tighter. Stop making this public. We didn't mean it that way. People are asking questions. I didn't answer any of them. Later that day, my aunt called. Her name is Denise, and she's the one relative who has always spoken softly, like she doesn't want to make things worse. When I picked up, she was already crying. "Hannah," she said, "tell me what's going on." I could hear someone talking in the background on her end, faint and muffled, a TV or another person. She stepped away from it, and the sound dropped. I didn't give her the softened version. I didn't have the energy. I told her what Tara did with the monitor cord. I told her a nurse saw it. I told her the police came, and they were escorted out. I told her the doctor said there were documented attempts to access my chart while I was unconscious. There was a pause. Not disbelief. Something else. Then Denise said quietly, "Oh my God." Not like she was shocked. Like something finally had a name. She asked me if I was okay. I said, "I'm stable. I'm safe here." I didn't say the other part out loud. The part where I didn't feel safe around my own family. The part where safety felt like a temporary condition. After we hung up, I got a text from my cousin Mia, a screenshot from the family group chat. People had already picked sides. Some messages were what I expected. She's always been sensitive. This should have been handled privately. Tara didn't mean it. My mother's friends and a couple of relatives were doing what they always did, smoothing, minimizing, using tone words like emotional and stress to explain things that didn't need explaining. But then I saw messages that made my throat tighten. A cousin admitting Tara had done similar things for years, An aunt saying she'd watched my mother twist a story in real time and had stayed quiet because it wasn't worth the fight. Someone wrote, "We all know how they are." That was the part that landed hardest. Not the insults, not the blame. The casual certainty that everyone had known, and the cost of knowing had always been paid by me. I put the phone face down again. Then I waited. 2 days later, a nurse came in with discharge papers and a small list of instructions written in plain terms: pain management, breathing exercises, follow-up imaging, a number to call if I felt lightheaded or short of breath. She asked me if someone was picking me up. I said, "A friend." That wasn't exactly true. Not yet. But I wasn't going to say my family, and I wasn't going to explain. I didn't tell anyone which day I was leaving. I didn't post about it. I didn't answer calls. I thought secrecy would buy me a clean exit. It didn't. When the nurse wheeled me toward the main entrance, I saw them through the glass doors. My mother was standing near the curb holding flowers and a cheap balloon that said, "Get well soon." Like props could reset everything. Tara leaned against the railing, phone in hand, looking bored. When my mother saw me, she stepped forward with the smile she uses in public, the one that makes strangers think she's gentle. "Hannah," she said softly, "we didn't mean for it to go that far." I didn't respond. I didn't take the flowers. I didn't look at the balloon. The nurse slowed, just slightly, like she was waiting for me to tell her what I wanted. I said, "Keep going." My mother walked beside the wheelchair anyway, matching our pace, still speaking like she could talk me back into compliance. "You're overreacting. This is private. You're making us look bad." Tara smirked at me, not even trying to hide it. I kept my eyes forward. I focused on the sound of the wheels on the floor, the texture of the blanket across my legs, the steady movement toward the car. I got in without saying a word. They didn't follow me into the parking lot, but they stood there watching as the car pulled away, and I felt it, clear as anything. Being stopped in a hospital didn't change who they were, it just embarrassed them. People like that don't accept embarrassment quietly. They adjust. They find a new way in. When I got home, I didn't unpack. My small suitcase sat in the hallway, still zipped. My apartment felt different, like it had been left alone too long and didn't recognize me. I checked the locks. Twice. I pulled the curtains. I turned on the lights even though it was daytime. Then my phone rang. It was my landlord. His voice was casual at first, like he was calling about a normal maintenance issue. "Hey," he said. "Someone reached out today asking about your lease. Said she was your sister. She wanted to know if there were any updates, and she asked about getting a copy of your key." I didn't speak right away. He continued. "I told her I'd need ID verification and written authorization." She hung up. My mouth went dry. I thanked him. I told him not to release anything, to anyone, without my direct confirmation in writing. He said, of course, like that was always the rule anyway. When the call ended, I sat on the edge of my bed with the phone in my hand. I stared at the wall. The hospital had felt like a sealed chapter, something contained and witnessed and recorded. But the key request told me something simple. They weren't finished. They were just changing tactics. I opened my banking app, not because I had a plan yet, but because I needed to see what they could reach. And that's when I remembered the old joint account, the one I'd opened years ago during my mother's surgery to help cover bills, because it felt responsible and loving and practical at the time. My thumb hovered over the login. Then I tapped, and the balance loaded. For a second, I thought the app was glitching. Then I refreshed it, and my stomach dropped. I stared at the number, still and quiet, as if looking long enough could make it change. It didn't. I put the phone down on the bed beside me. Then I picked it up again and opened the transaction history. The transaction list loaded in a clean column, like it was proud of how organized it looked. Dates, amounts, transfers out. I scrolled once, slow, then again. 2 withdrawals close together, both large, both spaced just enough apart that it didn't look like a panic move. It looked planned. I did the math in my head and then checked the last time I remembered seeing that account. I hadn't looked in months because I didn't use it anymore. It was the kind of account you forget exists when life gets busy and nothing seems wrong. Now it was almost empty. I didn't call my mother. I didn't call Tara. Not because I was trying to be strong. I just knew what would happen if I did. First, denial, then offense. Then a long explanation about why it was technically allowed. Then the part where I'd be told I was ungrateful for questioning family. I wasn't interested in any of that. I opened my notes app and wrote a short list, like I was at work. Step 1, separate access. Step 2, document everything. Step 3, tighten every weak point I forgot existed. I started with the bank. I called the main customer service line, got transferred twice, and asked to speak to someone who could help remove my name from a joint account or close it entirely. The woman on the phone didn't sound surprised. She sounded practiced. She asked security questions. She read a warning script. She told me what options I had. I chose closure. She explained that because it was joint, I had the right to close it without the other party's approval. She asked if I wanted the remaining balance moved to my personal checking account. Yes, I said. Then she asked if I wanted copies of the last 6 months of statements sent to my email. Yes, I said again. When the call ended, I sat very still for a moment, letting my body catch up to the fact that I had just done something my younger self would have been terrified to do. Not because it was complicated, because it was final. Next, I opened my email and searched my inbox for the word account, and then authorized, and then my mother's name. Old confirmations surfaced, utility logins, a shared phone plan from years ago, a subscription I forgot I ever agreed to. It was like looking at a map of every time I tried to be helpful and left a door unlocked behind me. I made another list. Then I started working through it one item at a time. I changed passwords first, not with clever phrases, but with long random ones. I turned on two-factor authentication anywhere it was offered. I removed old backup numbers and replaced them with my own. I didn't do it fast. I did it carefully. Every time a site asked, "Do you want to stay signed in?" I clicked no. My ribs hurt and my arm ached, but I kept going. That afternoon, I drove to my credit union. Not the big bank. The smaller place where the staff still recognized my face. It took effort to sit upright in the car, but I needed this part done in person. Inside, the air smelled like carpet cleaner and printer toner. A woman behind the counter smiled and asked how she could help. I told her I needed to check if anyone else had access to my accounts. Her smile softened. She lowered her voice and walked me through my profile on the screen. Old authorizations, old notes, a shared account from years back that I had half forgotten, tied to a time when my mother was recovering and I was trying to keep things stable. We removed everything that didn't need to be there. Before I left, she printed a short summary and slid it across the counter to me. Plain paper, simple lines, dates and access changes. "Keep this," she said, like she knew I would. When I got home, there was a delivery notification. The security cameras I ordered were out for delivery. I hadn't told anyone I was buying them. I didn't want opinions. I didn't want anyone talking me out of it. I set them up that evening with slow hands and a quiet kind of determination. Front door, side entrance, one inside facing the main hallway. The app asked me to name each camera. I kept it simple. Front, side, hall. When it was done, I sat on the couch and watched the live feed for a few minutes, just to see the normal stillness of my own place. The porch light, the empty walkway, the faint sway of a plant near the railing. For the first time since the accident, my shoulders dropped a fraction. I slept that night for more than 4 hours. Not perfect sleep, not deep and peaceful, but real. Then just after midnight, the sound hit my front door. Not a gentle knock. A solid thud, like someone leaned their weight into it. Then another. Then my name, said sharp and impatient. "Hannah, open up." "Tara." My mother's voice followed, calmer, controlled, like she was speaking to a neighbor instead of the daughter she had just watched get escorted out of a hospital. "Let's talk. Don't do this like this." I didn't move toward the door. I didn't answer. I slid off the couch carefully, ribs tight, and crouched behind it with my phone in my hand. My camera app was already open. The porch feed showed Tara pacing, her arms tight across her chest. My mother stood slightly behind her, hands clasped like she was trying to look reasonable. Then Tara bent down and picked something up from beside the steps. A brick, half buried in the edge of the garden bed. She held it for a moment, not throwing it yet, just weighing it, like she was deciding how far she could go before someone stopped her. I stared at the screen and felt my breathing get shallow. Then I tapped 911. When the operator answered, I gave my address clearly. I said I had 2 people outside my door refusing to leave. I said one of them had picked up a brick. I said I was alone and recovering from a car accident. The operator told me to stay inside, stay quiet, and not engage. So I did. I kept my phone low. I watched the feed. Tara lifted the brick slightly, then lowered it again. She looked toward the street. My mother kept talking, her mouth moving in that steady way she uses when she wants to sound calm for an audience. A few minutes later, headlights washed across the driveway. A police car? No siren. An officer stepped between them and my door without much conversation. Tara tried to laugh. My mother tried to explain. The officer didn't move. They backed away. But they didn't leave the area. On the camera feed, I watched them walk to their car and sit inside it across the street, facing my building, staying there like they were waiting for me to make a mistake. I sat behind the couch with my phone in my hand and watched that car idle. Then my screen lit up with a new email. Subject line: Confirmation of beneficiary change request. I stared at it for a full second before I opened it. I opened the email and read it once, slowly. Then I read it again. It was from my life insurance provider. The kind of email that looks automated, clean formatting, polite language. It said a request had been submitted to change the primary beneficiary on my policy. The change hadn't been completed because the digital signature didn't match what they had on file. But the request was real. It had a timestamp. It had an attempted authorization. I sat very still behind the couch, phone in my hand, listening to the faint sound of my own apartment settling, the soft buzz of the refrigerator. Outside, their car stayed parked across the street. I didn't call my mother. I didn't call Tara. I didn't even react the way I thought I might. My mind went quiet and organized, like something clicked into place. I opened my notes app again. Step 1, preserve proof. Step 2, lock down identity access. Step 3, create a record with third parties. I took screenshots of the email, the subject line, the sender address, the body, the timestamp. Then I forwarded it to myself at a second email address, the one I used for work and kept separate. Then I called the insurance company using the number on their official site, not the number in the email. After the usual prompts, a representative came on the line. I gave my policy number. I verified my identity. Then I said, calmly, I did not request any beneficiary change. I'm looking at an email confirmation of an attempted change. I want a fraud flag placed on the account, and I want a full log of access and attempted changes emailed to me. There was a pause. The rep's tone shifted, more serious, more careful. She told me they could put an alert on the policy and require verbal verification for any future changes. She said she could also initiate an internal investigation request and generate a report of account activity. I said, do it. When she asked if I knew who might have attempted it, I didn't speculate. I didn't vent. I said, it's likely a family member. I'm in the middle of a situation and I need my account secured. She gave me a case reference number. I wrote it down. Then I asked one more question. Was the request made online or by phone? She told me it was initiated online. That was enough to tell me what I needed to know. Someone either had access to my login, my email, or enough personal information to reset things. When I ended the call, I sat up carefully, wincing at the pull in my ribs, and checked the porch feed again. Their car was still there. I watched it for a full minute, then I did something I should have done years earlier. I called my uncle. His name is Mark. He's my mother's older brother, and he's the kind of man who doesn't speak much unless there's a reason. When he answers the phone, he doesn't say hello like a performance. He says it like a question. "Hannah," I said, "I need help." There was no hesitation. "Tell me what's happening." I didn't dramatize. I didn't give backstory. I gave facts in order, the way I would if I were reporting a problem at work. Hospital, monitor cord, police, attempts to access my chart, landlord call about my key, joint account drained, now an attempted beneficiary change. And my mother and Tara currently sitting in a car across the street, watching my building. There was a quiet pause on his end. Then he said, "Stay inside. Don't open the door. I'm coming." I said, "Okay." I didn't ask how long. I didn't ask what he'd do when he got here. I didn't need details. I needed a second person who dealt in rules. While I waited, I called my Aunt Marlene, Mark's wife. She picked up on the second ring. Her voice softened immediately when she heard mine. "Honey, what's wrong?" I told her. The same way. Calm. Direct. No extra words. She said, "We're on our way too. Put the kettle on if you can. If you can't, don't move. Just stay safe." I didn't put the kettle on. I stayed exactly where I was until I saw headlights pull into the lot and recognized Mark's truck. A few minutes later, the car across the street finally moved. Not fast, not dramatic, just a slow pull away like they were deciding to leave before the situation got bigger than they could control. Mark came up the stairs with a steady pace, no rushing. Marlene followed carrying a canvas tote bag like she was arriving to cook dinner, not handle a crisis. I opened the door only after I saw them through the peephole. The moment they stepped inside, the air in the apartment changed. Not because the danger vanished, but because it wasn't just me holding it anymore. Mark checked the locks without speaking. He tested the window latches. He stood near the living room camera and looked at it for a second like he was evaluating the placement. Marlene went straight to the kitchen and started setting things on the counter. Tea bags, a small container of sugar, 2 mugs, no questions yet, no lectures, just presence. When we sat down, Mark said, "Show me everything." So I did. I pulled up the bank transactions. I showed him the email from the insurance company. I showed him the camera feed recording of Tara holding the brick on my porch, her posture shifting like she was deciding whether to break something. He watched quietly, jaw tight. Then he said, "We're going to do this properly." That was the first time anyone had said it to me like that. Like it wasn't about family feelings, like it was about procedure. He took out his phone and called someone I didn't know. He put it on speaker. A man answered, voice low and clear. Mark introduced him as an attorney he trusted. The lawyer asked questions quickly, not unkindly, just efficiently. "Do you have a police report from the hospital incident?" "Yes," I said. "The hospital documented it. The police were involved." "Do you have documentation of the joint account transfers?" "Yes. I can pull statements. I already requested 6 months." "Did anyone attempt to get your key from the landlord?" "Yes. Landlord confirmed it by voicemail and told me she hung up when asked for verification." "Do you have the attempted beneficiary change email?" "Yes." "And video of the porch incident?" "Yes." There was a short pause. Then the lawyer said, "This isn't just family conflict. This is interference, intimidation, and attempted financial control. We need to create a clean record." Mark nodded like he'd expected that answer. The lawyer told me what to do next. Not emotionally, not philosophically, practically. File an official police report for harassment and attempted forced entry. Submit the insurance fraud attempt to the provider's fraud department in writing. Pull credit reports and freeze my credit. Remove medical proxy access if any exists. Prepare restraining order paperwork using documented incidents and third-party verification. While he spoke, I wrote it down. Step 1. Police report with video attached. Step 2. Fraud case follow-up in writing. Step 3. Credit freeze and report pull. Step 4. Medical access removal. Step 5. Restraining order packet. When the call ended, Marlene touched my hand briefly, light and warm, like she was checking that I was still here. Mark said, "Tomorrow we'll go through every account you have, every old login, every policy, everything. We'll close doors you didn't know were open." I nodded. That night, Marlene slept on my couch. Mark stayed in the armchair by the window like it was normal. He didn't watch TV. He didn't scroll his phone. He just sat there, quiet and steady. I lay in bed with my phone on the nightstand, face down, trying to let my body rest. Sometime after midnight, my porch camera sent a motion alert. I opened the app. A man I didn't recognize was standing near my front door, just outside the brightest part of the porch light. Hoodie, jeans, phone held to his ear. He paced slowly. Then he looked straight at my door and said my name, not loudly, not angry, just like he expected me to answer. I didn't move. I didn't breathe much. He stayed for 2 minutes, then walked back to a car I didn't recognize and drove away. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. In the morning, Mark watched the footage once, then again. He didn't ask me who it was. He said, "We're sending this to the police, today." And while Marlene made coffee in the kitchen, Mark sat down at my small table, pulled out a legal pad, and started writing a timeline with dates and times like he was building something that couldn't be argued with. I watched him write. Then my phone buzzed with a new text from a number I didn't have saved. It was one line. "Tell her to stop. She's making people nervous." I stared at it, thumb hovering. Then I did not reply. By late morning, Mark had turned my kitchen table into a work surface, not messy, not frantic, just organized. One page was a timeline with dates and times. Another was a short list of institutions and phone numbers. He wrote in block letters, the way people do when they want something to be readable in court. Marlene sat across from him with my laptop open, pulling up accounts as I remembered them. Old utilities, an email login I hadn't used in a year, a pharmacy portal, anything that could be used to reset something else. My job that day was simple. Answer questions, confirm facts, save copies, no guessing, no arguing, no explaining feelings. At noon, Mark drove me to the police station with the porch footage on a flash drive in an envelope. My ribs complained with every bump in the road. I kept my face neutral and stared out the window, letting him handle the talking until we were inside. The officer who took the report didn't look surprised when we showed the video. He watched the man on my porch say my name, then watched him walk away, calm and unhurried. He asked me if I recognized him. I said, "No." He asked if I had shared my address with anyone recently. I said, "Only family." He nodded once, like that connected the dots enough to keep moving. When we got home, Mark told me we were going to do one more thing before the day ended. "We're going to make it clear," he said, "not by fighting, by putting it on record." He called my mother. He did not argue with her on the phone. He didn't lecture. He didn't trade accusations. He said one sentence, slow and even. "We're meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. at my attorney's office. If you want to speak, you can speak there." My mother tried to control the call immediately. I could hear it through the speaker, that calm voice she uses when she wants the other person to sound unreasonable. "This is ridiculous. Hannah is taking things the wrong way. She's on medication. She's confused." Mark didn't respond to that. He said, "Bring whatever you think supports your version. We'll bring ours." Then he ended the call. That night, I slept lightly again. Not because anything happened, but because my body kept waiting for it. My phone stayed face down on the nightstand. I didn't check every notification. I let Marlene keep it in the living room for a while, like a small kindness I didn't have to ask for. The next morning, we left early. The attorney's office was in a quiet building with frosted glass doors and a small waiting area that smelled like coffee and paper. There were framed certificates on the wall and a bowl of mints that looked untouched. Mark signed us in. I sat with my sling across my lap and my brace under my jeans. I didn't try to look strong. I just sat upright and breathed carefully. At 10:06, my mother walked in. Tara came behind her. They looked around like they were assessing the room, checking who was present, what the power balance was. My mother's face softened when she saw me, the public expression, the concerned parent mask. Tara didn't bother with that. She looked irritated, like this was a meeting she didn't feel like attending. The attorney, Mr. Keene, brought us into a conference room. Long table, neutral lighting, a pitcher of water, a box of tissues that felt like a formality. Mr. Keene started by laying out the rules. "This is not a family discussion," he said. "This is a documented matter. We will speak one at a time. We will not interrupt. We will not raise voices. If that happens, the meeting ends." My mother smiled politely, as if she agreed with the concept of rules. Tara leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. Mr. Keene looked at me. "Hannah, do you want to speak first?" I didn't look at my mother. I didn't look at Tara. I looked at the table and spoke slowly so my voice stayed steady. "I'm here to confirm what is now on record. You interfered with medical equipment while I was under hospital care. After that, there were attempts to access my private medical information. Then there was an attempt to get a copy of my apartment key. Then money was removed from a joint account without discussion. Then there was an attempted beneficiary change on my life insurance policy." I paused, because rushing makes things sound emotional. "I'm not debating any of this," I said. "I'm telling you what has been documented, and I'm telling you what happens next." My mother's expression tightened, just slightly. Tara gave a short laugh through her nose, like she couldn't help herself. Mr. Keene slid a thin folder across the table toward them. Inside were printouts. Not dramatic, not thick, just enough. A hospital incident note with timestamps and staff statements. A summary of the police involvement at discharge. A screenshot of the insurance email with the case reference number written at the top. A copy of my landlord's voicemail transcript that Mark had typed and attached with the date and time. Mr. Keene said calmly, "These are not opinions. These are records." My mother reached for the folder and flipped through it fast, like speed could change what was on the page. Tara didn't touch it at first. She just stared at me. My mother tried to speak in her usual way. "Hannah, you're not well. You were in an accident. You're misunderstanding." Tara was worried. She was trying to help. She didn't know what she unplugged. I didn't respond to that. I said, "You are not allowed to contact my landlord again. You are not allowed to contact my employer. You are not allowed to attempt access to my medical or financial accounts. You are not allowed to come to my home." Tara leaned forward. "So, you're going to what? Get a restraining order because I knocked on your door?" Mr. Keene answered, "Not me." "This is not about knocking," he said. "This is about a pattern. If contact continues, we will proceed with a protective order and additional civil action related to financial interference." My mother's eyes sharpened at the word financial. That was where her calm always slipped. She turned to Mark, not to me, like I was still a child in the room. "This is about money," she said. "This is what this is. You're filling her head." Mark didn't react. He said, "We're not filling anything. We're closing access." Tara finally grabbed the folder and flipped to the insurance email. Her face shifted, just for a second, when she saw the part about the digital signature mismatch. She looked at my mother, quick and sharp, like a reflex. My mother's jaw tightened. The smile didn't come back. I watched both of them, quietly, and I realized something that settled me. They weren't angry because they cared about me. They were angry because the system had names for what they were doing. Mr. Keene placed another paper on the table. A formal no-contact notice. Simple language, clear boundaries. A statement that future contact would be treated as harassment and documented. My mother stared at it like it was an insult. Tara said, "You can't do this." Mr. Keene said, "We can, and we are." I didn't argue with either of them. I didn't explain why it hurt. I didn't bring up childhood. I didn't list old memories. I just said, "This is how it will be." My mother's voice lifted slightly, not shouting, but straining for control. "You're tearing the family apart." I looked at her for the first time. I kept my voice calm. "I'm not tearing anything," I said. "I'm stepping out of the part where you get to use me." The room went quiet. Mr. Keene stood. "That's enough for today." My mother pushed her chair back, too hard, the legs scraping the floor. Tara followed her out, still muttering under her breath. At the door, my mother turned as if she wanted one last line, something that would land and echo. Mark didn't give her space for it. He opened the door wider and said, "Goodbye." When the door closed behind them, I didn't feel relief like a celebration. I felt something cleaner. Order. Mr. Keene looked at me and said, "Now we wait for the bank statements and the insurance activity report. Those will tell us exactly who did what and when." I nodded. On the way home, my phone buzzed once, an email notification. Subject line, account activity report, ready. I didn't open it in the car. I held the phone in my lap and looked out the window until we pulled into my parking lot. When we got back inside my apartment, Marlene put the kettle on without asking. The small routines had started to matter. The sound of water filling the kettle, the click of the switch, the quiet that followed. Mark sat at my table with the same legal pad, but he didn't write yet. He waited until I was seated and comfortable. I opened my laptop, then I opened the email. The insurance company's report was a PDF attachment, the kind that looks boring until you realize it isn't. It listed logins, IP addresses, device types, failed verification attempts, and the exact time the beneficiary change request was initiated. I read it once all the way through without speaking. Then I read it again, slower. There was a login attempt from a device I didn't recognize. It wasn't from my apartment. It wasn't from my phone. It was from a location about 20 minutes from where my mother lived. The report also showed the password reset process had been initiated, and the reset link had been sent to my email address. Then it showed a failed attempt to finalize the change because the digital signature didn't match. Mark held out his hand without looking at me, and I handed him the laptop. He didn't react like he was shocked. He reacted like he'd been waiting for the paperwork to catch up. He said, "That's location-based and time-stamped. We'll attach it." Marlene set a mug of tea in front of me. Chamomile, honey. I wrapped both hands around it even though it was hot. It gave me something to do besides shake. Next came the bank statements. They arrived as a secure download link from the bank. 6 months of activity. I opened the PDF and searched for the largest transfers first. 2 of them stood out immediately, each just under the amount that would have automatically triggered additional internal review. The withdrawals weren't random. They were transfers to another account, listed by the last 4 digits, a different institution. A clean electronic move. I called the bank again with Mark sitting beside me and asked for the trace details that could be released to me. The representative told me, carefully, that because it was a joint account, both parties had equal rights to withdraw funds. But she confirmed the transaction pathway and provided a reference number for each transfer, along with the receiving bank's routing information. Mark wrote down the reference numbers and circled them. He didn't say, "I told you so." He said, "This is enough to move forward." By the afternoon, we had a folder. Not a dramatic binder, just a folder with a clear label on the front that Marlene wrote in black ink, H. Cole, timeline. Plus, supporting documents inside was everything, in order. Hospital incident notes and staff statement summaries, police case number from the hospital, My discharge paperwork showing I was still under care when the monitor was unplugged. The landlord voicemail transcription with his number and date. Camera footage of Tara holding the brick. Police report from the porch incident. The insurance report with the login location and time. It wasn't emotional. It was a system. Mark called Mr. Keene and told him the reports were in. Mr. Keene asked for copies. Mark scanned everything and sent it over. Then Mr. Keene called me, and his voice stayed calm and even. "With this," he said, "we can file for a protective order with a stronger basis. We can also request that any further contact be treated as a violation, and we can begin the process of addressing the financial interference in a formal way, even if the joint account makes recovery difficult." I didn't ask for revenge. I didn't ask what would hurt them most. I asked, what will stop them? He paused for half a second, like he appreciated the question. "Boundaries that have consequences," he said, "and documentation that makes those consequences enforceable." That was what I wanted. That evening, Mark called a small meeting, not a dramatic intervention, just people who mattered, in a room, with facts. 2 of his siblings came by, 1 cousin, and a family friend who worked in finance and understood trusts and business structures. They sat in Mark and Marlene's living room because Mark didn't want my apartment to become the center of it. I sat quietly with my mug of tea while Mark laid everything out on the coffee table, not with anger, with order. He went through the timeline, the reports, the footage. He didn't embellish. He didn't guess intentions. He said what happened and what was documented. The room stayed quiet as he spoke. When he finished, one of the relatives said, "So it's not just words anymore?" Mark said, "No, it's record." The family friend asked, "Do they have access to anything else? Business accounts? An LLC distribution? Any shared assets?" Mark didn't hesitate. "They used to," he said. "They won't." And that was when I learned something I hadn't known. There was a small family LLC tied to a business property my grandfather had owned years ago. Nothing glamorous, but it paid occasional distributions. My mother and Tara didn't work for it. They weren't involved. But they had been included for years because people called it family. Mark said, "We're changing that. Effective immediately." Nobody argued with him, not after they'd seen the paperwork. By the next day, processes were moving that I didn't have to manage myself. Mark filed the paperwork to remove my mother and Tara from anything they had no legitimate role in. He froze access to a small emergency family fund my grandfather had set up, the one my mother had treated like a private resource. He didn't do it loudly. He did it through forms and signatures and phone calls with people who didn't care about guilt stories. That was the difference. Systems don't respond to guilt. They respond to verification. A few days later, the restraining order paperwork was filed. The hospital documentation was attached. The police reports were referenced. The insurance report was included. The camera footage was logged. Mr. Keene explained it all to me in plain language. "If they contact you again," he said, "you don't respond. You document. You report. That's it." I said, "Okay." Then the quiet weeks began. No midnight banging. No strange cars idling outside my building. No calls from unknown numbers. I still jumped sometimes when my phone vibrated. I still checked the camera feed more than I wanted to. But nothing happened. The order held. And the silence that used to feel like waiting started to feel like space. About a month later, my cousin Elise texted me from a new number. "I didn't want to see it before," she wrote. "I do now. I'm sorry." I read it. Then I put my phone face down. Not because I was punishing her. Because I was done carrying conversations that tried to make my reality negotiable. Another month passed. Mark asked me a question one evening while Marlene washed dishes. "Do you want to stay here?" he said. "Or do you want to leave?" He didn't say it like a test. He said it like a normal option. I looked around my small apartment. Same view, same hallway, same door that had been hit with a shoulder, same porch where Tara had stood with a brick. I knew, very quietly, that even if they never came back, I didn't want to keep living inside the memory of them trying. I said, "I want to leave." Mark nodded like that was a decision he respected without needing to approve it. So we planned it without announcements. No social media, no group chat explanation, just a series of steps. Step 1. Find a place with good locks and quiet neighbors. Step 2. Change my mailing address quietly. Step 3. Move essentials only and leave the rest behind. We found a small apartment in a different town, about 2 hours away. Older building, nothing special. But the hallway was well lit, and the neighbors barely looked up when we passed. On move day, Mark drove the rented trailer. Marlene followed with a car full of blankets and food like it was a simple road trip. I packed one suitcase with things I couldn't replace: documents, a few photos, my laptop, a small box of important papers. Everything else was just objects. That first night in the new apartment, I sat on the floor with my back against the wall and listened. No voices outside the door, no footsteps stopping at my porch, no one saying my name like they owned it. I didn't sleep much, but nothing happened. And in the morning, when light came through the blinds and the building started its normal settling sounds, I felt something shift. Not happiness exactly. Something steadier. A sense that my life was mine again, because access had finally been removed. That afternoon, while Marlene unpacked kitchen items and Mark tested the locks one more time, I opened my laptop and saw an email from the court clerk. Protective order granted, effective. Immediately, I stared at the subject line for a long moment. Then I clicked it open and read it once, carefully, like I was studying a new rule. And when I finished, I closed the laptop. I didn't celebrate. I just stood up slowly, walked to the sink, and washed one mug like it mattered. The first week in the new apartment felt quiet in a way my body didn't fully trust yet. The building had its own sounds, pipes ticking when the heat came on, a neighbor's footsteps passing my door in the evening, a door closing down the hall. Normal things that used to mean nothing, but my nervous system still treated them like warnings, so I gave myself a routine. Nothing ambitious. I woke up, made tea, and opened the blinds just enough to let light in without putting myself on display. I kept my phone face down while the kettle warmed. I didn't scroll first thing. I didn't check the camera feed. I let my mind arrive slowly. Mark and Marlene didn't hover. They checked in once a day and then let the day be mine. When they visited, they brought ordinary things: groceries, a new set of towels, a small toolbox. They didn't ask me to explain my feelings. They didn't ask me to forgive anyone. They treated peace like something you build by maintaining it. I started taking short walks in the afternoon. Same loop each day, past a small park and a corner store. The air smelled like cold pavement and laundry detergent from the building vents. It wasn't beautiful, but it was calm. People nodded without curiosity. No one knew my last name. No one expected anything from me. The protective order stayed in place. No violations. No surprise visits. No midnight calls. That didn't mean my mother and Tara disappeared. It just meant they couldn't reach me directly. Once, a distant cousin I barely spoke to tried to message me, asking if I could just talk to them because things were so tense and everyone missed how it used to be. I read it, then deleted it. I didn't correct the story. I didn't defend myself. I didn't offer a version that was easier to digest. I didn't need to. The truth was already documented. The timeline existed outside of anyone's opinion. Some evenings, Marlene and I sat at my small thrift store table with 2 mugs of tea and a bag of plain cookies. She'd talk about normal things, toggle with her phone, complain about traffic, ask if I wanted help choosing a rug. And every once in a while, she'd look at me and say, "You good?" I learned to answer honestly without over-explaining. "Better," I'd say, or "tired, but okay." That was enough. The strangest part, after everything, was how ordinary safety looks when it finally becomes consistent. It isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It just shows up day after day until your shoulders stop bracing for impact. One Saturday morning, I went through my paperwork again, not because I had to, but because it helped me feel clear. I kept a folder in a kitchen drawer labeled Home. Inside were copies of the protective order, the case numbers, the insurance fraud case confirmation, and the bank statements. I also kept a short sheet Mark helped me make, titled, If Something Happens. It listed who to call, what to save, where the footage was stored, and what I should not do. At the bottom, in simple handwriting, it said, Do not engage, do not negotiate, document, report, repeat. I didn't write it as a threat. I wrote it as a boundary I could follow even on a bad day. That afternoon, I cleaned my kitchen slowly, wiped counters, washed dishes, took out trash. It was the kind of mindless movement that lets your thoughts settle. When I finished, I made tea and sat on the floor with my back against the couch, letting the quiet be quiet. And I thought about something that stayed with me from the hospital. Not the monitor cord, not the police in the doorway, the nurse, the way she didn't debate what she saw. She didn't ask for a family meeting. She didn't give my sister another chance to explain. She saw interference. She followed procedure. She called for help. I keep thinking about people who don't have a nurse outside the door. People who get told they're exaggerating, and the people around them are charming enough to make others believe it. People who don't know that systems can protect you if you learn how to use them. A few weeks after I moved, Mark called to tell me something quietly. He said my mother had tried to contact him again, not to apologize, but to ask if the LLC changes could be reversed. She said it was punishing the whole family. She said it was unfair. Mark told her no. Then he said, I wanted you to know they're still thinking about access. I thanked him and ended the call. Then I stood at my kitchen sink and rinsed a mug that didn't need rinsing, just to keep my hands steady. The truth is, I don't know what my mother and Tara tell people now. I don't know how they frame it. I don't know who believes them. I also don't care the way I used to. I'm not waiting for their understanding anymore. I'm not waiting for permission to be okay. I'm building a life that doesn't include them. My name is Hannah Cole, and for the first time in my life, I am calm in my own home. If you're listening to this and there's someone in your life who keeps pushing past your boundaries, someone who treats your fear like it's inconvenient, please take it seriously. Not with panic, with steps, with records, with support. Sometimes the safest thing you can do is stop arguing and start documenting. And if you've ever needed help making a clean plan, I have another story for you soon, about someone who thought a shared account was harmless until one small email proved it wasn't.